We've got here a Fender 65 Deluxe Reverb reissue. A local player brought this in, said the amp suddenly stopped working. He said he checked the fuse, that's not it. We will check that as well just in case. Sometimes fuses look like they're good, but they're not. And please change the power cable, which I would insist on doing anyway because someone broke off the ground lug, probably trying to break a ground loop. I need to do a video on the better ways to do that at some point, but for right now let's focus on seeing why this stopped working. The first thing I'm going to check is the filter caps. All right, I have been in this amp before. That's my handwriting. I recapped that 5 of 18, so that is good. I'll put those back. Next thing to check is preamp tubes. See if one of them may be dead, but visibly be fine, but sometimes they lose vacuum, and that will give a whitish appearance. None of them have lost vacuum, same for the power tubes and output tubes. So let me put these screws back, and I know that the amp would have had the third prong on the power cable last time I had this amp, but that was 2.5 years ago, almost 3. Let me put this back and we'll check out the next stuff. Next we will check this fuse. I could measure it within the fuse holder, but it's good to do this on camera. So it has a 2 amp fuse, which is correct, and that fuse certainly looks good. Let me measure that with my meter, just in case. Sometimes the eyes lie about fuses. Nope, got good continuity to the fuse. So put that back. This amp's got an old C12K. It's possible that the speaker is the issue. But let me power this up, being careful with the ungrounded chassis, and see what happens. I got a twist in the power cable I've got to undo. Looking through this while I'm doing the power cable, it's got factory rectifier tube. It's got a pair of JJ6V6s, later replacements. It's got all factory preamp tubes except for V3, which is a Tungsol 12AT7, which looks like something I probably put in 2.5 years ago. All right, I'm gonna have my current limiter in there. I'm powering it on, and I have no light here at the lamp. I don't have the speaker connected yet, but I've got the amp in standby. So does that mean that we have no secondary voltage to the heaters? Does that mean we have no voltage whatsoever? There's a thermal fuse in these power transformers. Once in a while that'll go out. So I'm going to measure AC. Measure on the HT connections to the rectifier tube. 600 volts there. Measure across the 5 volts. Pins 2 and 8. Just under 5 volts. All right, let me check on the heaters. This one I've got to be a little more careful so I don't short things. All right, we've got heater voltage. Tells me we've got a dead bulb in here. Now, very, very rarely a bad indicator lamp can cause other things in the amp not to work. It's not a likely thing, but I have had it happen once or twice. So let me change out that bulb, because even for me as a tech, I like having that indicator light just as a reminder of when there is power inside. Yeah, that bulb, the little filament is disconnected there, it looks like. Pardon me, I've got the sniffles. We've had a change in the weather. I'll try not to gross anyone out. I'll edit out the worst sounds. Let's see if we've got light again. That's good. Put the jewel back in place. Turn the reverb down and the volume's all the way down. And I like to set the tone controls halfway so that when I do hear sound, I have a reasonable expectation of what I'm going to hear. Let's connect a speaker to it. So when I take it out of standby, there is a load. And straighten things out for the camera a little bit. And power it on. And I don't use the standby switches on these. They're glorified mutes. Now I've got the channel volume here turned all the way up, and I'm not hearing anything, which would line up with his just stopped working theory. So let's troubleshoot this. I'm actually going to move the camera on the tripod to the other side of the chassis for the rest of this so that I can work without having the camera between me and the piece. So just a second. Okay, I'm going to check the focus. Pretty good. All right, we've already verified that we've got AC secondaries. We re-verify that just in case there's a difference in the secondary voltage when there is a load. So on the heaters, again, I've got the current limiter just in case something's screwy inside the amp. All right, that all is good. All right, let's check DC now. So for the rest of this, I will connect my black lead to the chassis at a point where it'll be out of my way. The red and black wires on my meter always like to twist up on each other. All right, so here at pin, let me move the camera down. Here at pin 8 of the rectifier tube, 374. All right, and check on the plates of the output tubes. 371, 370. Those at the plates. Let me check the screens. 371. 371, we'll check the grids. Negative 35. Negative 35. So the output tubes are fine, and I can hear it through the speaker when I measure those. Let me get this stupid piece of cardboard out of here. Yeah, it keeps toddlers from sticking things in the back of your amp and getting zapped, but even better than that is not letting your toddlers have access to the amp. All right, let's measure at the phase inverter. I should be able to hear this through the amp. So pin 1. No voltage. Pin 6. No voltage. All right, so that tells me that the problem is after the choke. So let me see, the choke is connected here and here, these two black wires. On one side, I've got 373 volts. The other side, I've got 372 volts. All right, so it's not the choke. Let's measure at the plate resistor for the phase inverter. Don't have any voltage there. No wires are loose. So the first node and the reservoir cap node and the screen node are good, and after that we're losing it. So actually I need to go back to the filter caps and check out that dropping resistor in there. That is one that I rarely change because it rarely fails. It's a metal oxide, like 2 watt 10K. Let's check that again. Okay, with the amp powered off, let's measure continuity. So here's our reservoir cap. Here's our screen node. I know that these two have voltage on them through the choke. What's happening is here at the phase inverter cap, which is on the other side of this resistor, which is loose. Aha! There's the problem. Factory solder joint gave way. Anyway, I was gonna say, this is the preamp filter node. It's connected here at this resistor. And the other side of this resistor is connected to this resistor, and that's where the phase inverter voltage is. And this resistor just came unsoldered, probably from heat. And that looks under wattage to me. I thought originally they had a larger value resistor there, like a 2 watt. And there's some heat discoloration here where that's been arcing. So let me fix all this, and I'm gonna flip things around again and show you as I do it. All right, here's what's going on. This resistor at some point got warm, and the pads have just lifted off these copper traces. So I'm gonna get both these resistors out, and we will do a good enough for rock and roll fix to this, because once those pads lift like that, your options decrease a little bit as far as reusing the board, and that is just a matter of heat. Though I suspect some tech after me might have changed those. These are my solder joints on these changed filter caps, and you can see I have the mechanical support crimped against the board. These are not crimped all the way down. They're kind of at an angle. That's not my work. And every one of these I've seen from Fender has had larger 10Ks there. This looks like an early one. Maybe this is just it's possible this is just an old factory joint and it just got hot and the amp vibrates and they messed up. So let me get all this out and I'll show you what we're going to do to fix this. Alright, with the solder off, you can see that this pad was entirely disconnected from the trace. And this one has lifted up. I could flap it up. And so once that happens, these are useless. If this were a board that required it, what I could do would be to scrape away this protective coating over this copper trace and expose a large area of that copper, and then tin that, and then solder the new lead to that. But given the mechanical properties of those F&Ts, which do have good mechanical support, and so the actual crimp of these wires against the board takes the stress, any stress of them, rather than have it be on the solder on those pads, and then that these caps are also siliconed to this board, these are very rigid, and they're bearing their own weight, and they're bearing their own mass, and they're vibration resistant, and these are very strong, especially since on the other side of these, the leads are the same, very short spans of curved wire. So there's no stress at the junction with the body, but that's a very strong support network. So I can attach the new 10K interstage dropping resistors to the capacitor hots on the other side and do the way the board is laid out. I will show you the after because it's just too difficult to set up the camera on the other side. Either remove the tubes or focus through the tubes and all that. You know, I warn people against tack soldering. I will not just be doing tack soldering. I will have some mechanical support built into the leads of the resistors, and I will show you that. But this will be a very inexpensive, solid repair. Then I'll show you what else we're going to do with this amp once the power is working. Okay, is that lovely? No. But it is quick, it is strong, it is reliable, and this is not an expensive amp, and it is used all the time by a working musician. So whatever I can do to get this back to the musician working very well, as quickly and as inexpensively as possible, here we go. If this were any other era Fender, I would be able to do a much more elegant thing. But you know, if this were an old 60s or 70s Fender and a solder joint broke in the doghouse, you know, it's just solder in an eyelet. You don't have to do anything heroic here. These boards, I don't think he needs to spend the money for a replacement PCB when this is structurally better than the PCB to begin with. And as far as the looks, and for that matter, how it actually works, it's not too dissimilar from what you'd find in the 50s tweed Fenders. Just doing a little bit of crimp wrapping there instead of eyelets. But this is secure, and the other side of these filter caps was not affected. So now let's power the amp up and see how things are going. All right, powered on. We have sound. A little bit of crackle on that pot. Not too bad. I'll check that out. That's a secondary thing. But let's measure the voltages now. Confirm that we have everything the way I want it to be. Back to measuring DC. All right, at those plates, 172, 168. Remember, I've got lower voltages in this amp right now, just because I have the current limiter in place. Let me check my cathodes. Why am I not getting any cathode voltage there? Got 356. I get any cathode voltage there. The other side of this tube. Plenty on the B plus. Not getting cathode out of the tube used for the tremolo. Now it's possible that he doesn't use the tremolo and he hasn't noticed that that tube is bad. That tube should have cathode voltage on both sides. It's an old Sovtech label, Fender labeled Sovtech. Let's pop in this. I got a generic around here somewhere. All right, no name, made in China, generic tube. Let's see if we have cathode voltages here at V5. I will call him and find out if he wants that vibrato to work. He may have just figured it just stopped and is messed up, and we'll check back again at some point. You know, I figured he'd get it fixed eventually if it's just a tube though. All right, we got a 1/2 volt now on that cathode that had none before. Still not getting a cathode voltage on V5 there. I believe that should have a cathode voltage even if the tremolo is not trimming. I already got voltage now. It just drops really low. The other side of V5 now has the proper voltage, even though it had none before. All right, let's check everything on V4. So cathode, good. I'm checking the cathode here first. Oops, that was a grid. Because if there is no cathode voltage, it doesn't matter if there's plate voltage. The cathode tells me if current is actually flowing through these tubes. So I can check the plate voltage. That only gives me half the puzzle. But we do have plate voltage everywhere. And I'm not going to touch that grid again on the reverb driver. All right, let's see what kind of sound this thing is making. Let's see. I've got the SG plugged in, so SG it will be. Let's start with the vibrato channel. This is with the reverb tank disconnected. Oh, it helps if I turn the volume up on the guitar. I'll only turn that down so we're not blasting ourselves. pot's noisy. Alright, treble pot's noisy. Sometimes I have to clean them. Sometimes just turning them a little bit, as you just heard, will clear that up. If they're used without moving them very often, so if you always have them on 5 and 6, you get some dirt in the pot and not know it because it's never being turned. And sometimes you have to spray them out and clean them. Other times just working the pot a little bit back and forth will clear that out if it's not too bad. Now on this normal channel, let's check that volume pot, that treble pot again. Alright, that one really needs to be cleaned, but that depends on whether the owner uses that channel. I don't want to charge him for moving the entire preamp board to clean that pot if he never uses that channel. That's just real world stuff. I'm not gonna fix a feature that he doesn't use without his permission. Now, microphonics check. Ever so slightly microphonic JJs, that's pretty common on the 6v6S's. But the amp seems to be otherwise in pretty good health. So I'm going to check the bias because it's been 2.5 years. And I will install a grounded power cable and talk to him about whether he wants me to clean those pots or not. But this seemed like a much scarier problem to the player than it is to the tech. You just gotta go through and calmly measure things, and don't measure voltage on a grid when you're listening through a speaker rather than a dummy load. These are things I tell myself, but I still do it once in a while, and then I go, ah! Sorry for the Pee Wee herming. All right, so new power cable installed. Heater wires moved from the PCB to pins 2 and 7 of the last power tube. The bias was really cold, like at 40% idle when it came in. It's about 58% now. I spoke to the owner. He never uses the vibrato channel, so no need to clean that treble. Let's say he never uses the normal channel, rather. Never uses the normal channel. If I speak good one day. So there's no need for me to remove all the pot board just to clean that one pot. He thought the tremolo was just dead, that there's something really wrong with the amp, but it was just that weak tube. And no problems with the reverb, so I think everything's gonna be hunky-dory on this. That's a different Ziggy album, isn't it?